Happy Super Sunday, everybody, or happy Super Bowl Sunday, or whatever you call this Sunday whenever the Super Bowl is happening. And of course, I am going to be watching the Super Bowl probably about the first 3 quarters before I have to go out and eat. And by the time that this video is uploaded, probably the Super Bowl has already started, and you probably are watching this video when the Super Bowl is over, so you probably know who won the game. And just a fun fact about the Super Bowl, both of the quarterback that is starting in this game, Tom Brady and Jared Goff, both of them are Bay Area natives. Jared Goff, of course, from Nevada in the North Bay. I think he went to Marin Catholic. And then Tom Brady, of course, from the Peninsula, went to Sarah High School during his time. So that's kind of an interesting fact. And if you ask me who I want to win, I don't really care who wins. I'll just say the Rams that I am rooting for, because I guess everybody do not want to see the Patriots win again and want to see the evil empire win again. It's almost like everybody don't want to see New England wins because they just win all the time, and that they're kind of getting tired of it. Kind of like how in 5 years time in MLS, if Atlanta is going to win every single year, people are going to start hating Atlanta because they win all the time. Although, to be fair, most people hate Atlanta nowadays because, their fans are kind of a little bit, you know what I mean. Okay, so yeah, but with that being said, let's actually go back and talk about MLS. And I know there's only 4 things to talk about in the news of the week, but I'm also going to be doing a little bit of a review for yesterday's game between USA versus Costa Rica, which I didn't really watch a lot of that game live, but I did watch the highlights a couple of times and read a couple of the Reddit posts and the comments of people reacting to this game, so that at least I know what actually happened in this game. But let's actually talk about the news of the week first. And certainly one thing that you can already see that is missing in the news of the week is that there is no Miguel Almiron on the board. And the reason why I decided to not talk about the Miguel Almiron record-breaking transfer in this episode is because I talked about it in the last episode. And I even dedicated an episode talk about his transfer saga. And, like I said, in the last episode, I talked about how he was going through a medical, and in about one day, Newcastle is going to announce that Miguel Almiron will join their club, and they will pay Atlanta with a record amount of fees that they have paid to a team, which I think it was around $27 million. So that's why I decided to not really talk about it. Now, one thing that also happened during that day, and I'm not quite sure if this was coincidence or did this really kind of happen, but Sebastian Giovinco, he has left TFC. And after all this talk about how his future with TFC was being very uncertain and that maybe he is going to move to Saudi Arabia, well, it's confirmed that he is going to be moving to Saudi Arabia, and it happens on the same day that Miguel Almiron left Atlanta United to Newcastle United. And again, I'm not quite sure if that was a coincidence or if that is what TFC was thinking about. They just want to make sure they want this news to kind of break into the MLS landscape so that everybody just don't talk about the Miguel Almiron situation. And this is definitely a big kind of story. And unlike how Atlanta, of course, letting go of Miguel Almiron to go to Europe and joining a pretty decent kind of club, and how there's like a lot of happy endings and stuff like that, with Giovinco, there's anything but happy endings. And in many ways, it's kind of a sour ending between TFC and Giovinco in terms of their relationship, because apparently what happened was that, Giovinco, he actually demanded that TFC was going to pay a certain amount of money, and it was a very high amount of money that TFC has to pay Giovinco in order to extend his contract. And TFC, of course, says no, because you are not going to receive that much amount of money. And as much as you have done so much for our club, and that you won us an MLS Cup, and that you almost won us a CCL title and get us to the final of CCL, we are not going to give you that much money if you're already turning 32 just a couple of days ago, and by the time this contract ends, you would be right around the mid 30s. And usually when strikers gets to their 30s and approaching their mid 30s, they are going to really slow down. And I think last year was probably the first sign that we saw Giovinco kind of slow down a little bit. Last year I think was probably his worst year out of the couple of years that he's been in MLS and with Toronto. But I know that TFC fans is absolutely upset about this situation, and they're absolutely pissed off about how the front office handled this. But to be fair, I actually think TFC did the right thing. I understand it's hard to let go your best star in this team, and I get the fact that the fans are probably not going to be happy about that. But even if they do not re-sign Giovinco at this time, they probably are going to let him go either in the summer transfer window or at the end of his contract, which is the end of this season. And during that time, you are going to not actually receive any money because of that. I mean, they received $3 million out of this deal, which is definitely not a lot of money and is way less than they actually got him. But when you sell a guy that is in his mid 30s and you're selling to the Middle East, also known as the retirement league of the world, yeah, you are not going to get a lot of money out of that deal. And I think TFC knows that their window is closing. I mean, I've been talking about how their window is closing and that they are really kind of dismantling their big three. And I think I forgot to talk about this, and I cannot believe I actually make this big mistake, and I'm surprised nobody actually said in the comments below how that Victor Vasquez was no longer with TFC. And I think for the last couple of episodes I was saying that Victor Vasquez was still with TFC, even though that's not true anymore. He also gone to the Middle East. And when you look at this happening, it looks like it is a domino effect for TFC, and it's like they are dismantling their core, and that they are approaching to a stage where they are rebuilding. And it looks, I said before how this could happen next year because of how Giovinco and Altidore hit their contract is over, but it looks like it's going to happen now than it is next year. And I guess it's a good thing that it's happening now because, at least this year, a lot of the fans will know that, well, we're going to rebuild and we're going to try to figure out how to build a core that we got a couple of years ago, and then maybe in the future we are going to be competitive. Now, not all TFC fans are obviously happy with this idea, and I know that there are a lot of TFC fans even go as far as selling their or cancel their season ticket because of how this rebuilding process go, which if you're that kind of fans, I mean, yeah, you are clearly not a real fan. You are clearly a fair weather fans and don't actually understand how your team is not always going to be competitive all the time. You're going to have some down year, and you're going to have a period where you have to go through a rebuild because your core is aging very badly and they need to replace them. So yeah, TFC are doing that, and since now they are thinking about rebuilding, that means that the CCL run that they were really hoping that they can pretty much get back to CCL final and redeem themselves from what happened last year, yeah, that is pretty much out the window. I just don't see how TFC is going to go very far into CCL, and this regular season is going to be really tough for TFC. And I know even though they still have Josie Altidore and Michael Bradley and a couple of their core still intact with this team, it could be something very similar to last year, where for majority of last year they were hammered with injury, and when they did not have some of their main core player, or even only had partially some of their main core player, they really struggle. So I expect TFC is going to take a huge step back, and that, now they are going to go through a stage of rebuilding. And I think of any GMs that I would always trust in terms of the rebuilding process, Ali Curtis would definitely be the guy that I would say he would be right at the top of the list of the GM you would really trust doing a rebuilding process, because he's done it with the Red Bulls. When he was with the Red Bulls, he had to like rebuild with that team and basically get rid of some of the aging guys from that team, and he did it very successfully. So at least for TFC fans, they can use that as an example of how things are definitely going to be good in the future. Things might not go very well this year, but it's going to go very well in the future. Now, staying with TFC, I know I've been spending a lot of time talking about it because this is definitely a big deal, and I was going to make a video about this, but then, I kind of want to wait till today to actually talk about it. But staying with TFC, they have reported that they are going to they're going to do a loan move for Independent striker Jonathan Menendez, or I should say a guy that doesn't really start with Independiente, and that he actually just came back from a loan with a Qatar club where he did not do very well with that club. In fact, he rarely start for that club that he was on loan with, and I have a feeling that this is just a news. I guess TFC want to announce this news to the fans just to say that, hey, we kind of have a replacement for Sebastian Giovinco, and we're just saying Independiente and not saying that he is actually on loan with a Qatari club, because Independiente is one of the most respectable club in South America, and we also are getting an Argentine, which, anytime when you get a young South American player, and especially an Argentine like Jonathan Menendez is, then it kind of excites the fans until if you actually read deeply into who he really is and some of the history that he had in the past with the clubs that he joined, then you know that he's definitely not the replacement for Giovinco, and he's probably going to be, at best, a TAM player. I don't think he's going to be the replacement for Giovinco. And, for TFC, it will be very interesting to see who is going to replace Giovinco. It is just almost impossible to replace Giovinco, with the way that he's been with TFC. And I think it's going to be a while for them to find a way to replace some of the goals that he scored, and maybe hopefully they can find that in their academy. But meanwhile, talking about another big news that just happened also on the same day of the whole Giovinco and Almiron kind of transfer, Lucho Acosta, he was actually very close of going to PSG. And he actually flew to Paris, and there was even a rumor says that he even did a medical for PSG. And just as the window closed in the winter transfer window in Europe, PSG says no. They turned down the deal for Lucho Acosta. Apparently, I think DC United wanted 12 million or 10 million for Lucho Acosta, but PSG says, yeah, we're not paying 10 to 12 million for him. We're only paying as high as $8 million. And, and then, of course, eventually they didn't really get into an agreement. And Lucho Acosta, obviously, after this failed transfer, he publicly said that he was absolutely devastated. The fact that he wasn't able to join PSG. And I don't blame him for being very devastated, because anytime you get a chance to join one of the biggest clubs in the world, and it turns out that you are unable to do it at the very last minute, it is definitely a very heartbreaking kind of feeling, and certainly a gut-punching feeling that Lucho Acosta just suffered. And now for DC United, they are kind of in a bit of a tough spot with Lucho Acosta, because if you decided to not re-sign him, which Acosta at the end of the year his contract is expire, which means that in the summer a club could actually go and get Lucho Acosta, and they don't really need to pay DC United for any money because his contract is running down. Or do you decided to re-sign him? And if you decided to re-sign him, how are you going to convince that you want to re-sign him? Because Lucho Acosta, he's pretty heartbroken the fact that this move didn't work out, and you wonder, will this really affect in terms of his relationship with DC United, and also the on-play situation where and sometimes when you see a player get linked with a big club and then at the very last minute their move got rejected, they will really feel very down, and that they're not only the relationship with the club that they were supposed to be leaving is going to sour a little bit, but also the on-field production is going to go down a little bit. So it will be interesting to see how Lucho Acosta is going to be this year, and the fact that will DC United decide to re-sign him. And then finally, the Vancouver Whitecaps, once again, they are spending money because they have a bunch of that. I mean, basically, the Whitecaps front office are just basically doing this every single day, because we're just going to spend so much money now because we've been kind of in a hibernation mode for the last couple of months, but then all of a sudden, with now knowing that, it's time for the January transfer window and it's time to get things going, that's what is happening with Vancouver right now, because they have once again acquired another player. This time they acquired Tunisian international center back Jassa Kamari. That's how you pronounce his name. And yeah, the Whitecaps are started to shaping their squad, and I heard that he was a very decent center back with Tunisia, and I think he was part of the Tunisian team that went to the World Cup this past year in Russia. And yeah, this is definitely a decent signing for the Whitecaps, and certainly Whitecaps fans are very excited about their upcoming season. Funny how Whitecaps fan in the beginning of the offseason, they were very concerned because there was no move being made, but now all of a sudden they're pretty much over the moon right now, and they're on cloud nine. And that's what happens when teams decided to be ambitious and decided to sign some players. I wish my club, the San Jose Earthquakes, would have done that, but unfortunately that is not what we are trying to do, even though technically we did sign a couple of players in this offseason. But yeah, finally, we're going to be talking a little bit about the USA versus Costa Rica match. And the match, of course, finished 2-0. And I actually didn't attend this match, even though it's at Avaya, because like I said before, tickets was just way too expensive, and I'm not going to pay $60 to watch a glorified friendly. And, like I said, it was a 2-0 win for the US, which means it's another clean sheet for us. First half, there was no score in this game, and really, the first half, the US was not very good. Like, it wasn't a very kind of inspiring first half. We were kind of slow again, but the second half was a bit different. I mean, the second half, we really got things going, and seems like there was some urgency that, hey, we got to win this game so that we can impress some of the U.S. men's national team fans and get their confidence back into this national team. And I think in the second half, we also hit the post twice. Nick Lima actually hit the post in the 53rd minute, and if that one went in, Avaya would have just erupted like it has not been since that winning goal that we scored against Minnesota in the last day of the season a couple of years ago. I mean, and during the game, there was a lot of Lima chant from the crowd, just to show you how much they love him in San Jose. And as a Quakes fan, I know for a fact that a lot of Quakes fans love Lima and and love the way that he contribute with this team. And then Rodon, of course, hit the post about 10 minutes later, but eventually we did get on the board in the 80th minute. Lletget gets a goal from Lewis, and Sebastian Lletget, what a story this was for him. I mean, just a couple, or not a couple of years ago, but just 1 year ago, and back in March, he, of course, suffered a torn ACL injury in that game against Honduras. And now, 1 year later, he returns to Avaya Stadium and he scored the winning goal in this game. And that's not the only thing that he did in this game, because 8 minutes later, Ariola scores a goal from Lletget. So Sebastian Lletget with a goal and assist in this game. And I think he was also named the man of the match in this game. And yeah, it is a wonderful story by Sebastian Lletget. And as much as he is, I shouldn't be rooting for Sebastian Lletget in terms of the way that he performed, because he is a Galaxy player. You know, anytime when a US player is doing well, and you know, Lletget, people forget that he even though he is with the Galaxy, he was actually born in the Bay Area, and I was kind of disappointed the Quakes did not decide to pick up his option and made him a homegrown player, because you know, it would have makes sense to bring him as a homegrown player, and you can definitely see that he has a lot of talent. But yeah, good to see that Lletget, for the first time since he blew his knee at Avaya Stadium and coming back to the same place that he blew his knee, to put up a good performance. But overall, you know, when you look at this performance, I think it was definitely a decent kind of performance. But again, it's not a performance, as much as I know people are kind of still over the moon about how, you know, Greg Berhalter, back-to-back clean sheet. We have give up 0 goals. Our defense looked absolutely solid, which it is. Our defense looked very, very good for the first 2 games. And we also are scoring goals in this game. But keep in mind, this is with an MLS team, and we are playing against Costa Rica and Panama when they're basically playing pretty much their C squad. So until when this team actually perform, and when this team well, not perform, but when they do play against a big team, and when they actually bring some of those European kind of players, or those players that currently play in Europe, to the national team and see how they do with this team, then, you know, then I will start judging of how the US would be. And if they do well, then I would start to believe that maybe the US are kind of back in they're kind of back in it. In terms of the stats in this game, the US, of course, outshot Costa Rica 12-6 on shots. They had 4 shots on target compared to just 1 for Costa Rica. They had 7 off target compared to 3 for Costa Rica, and 1 shot was blocked compared to 2 that was blocked for Costa Rica, and they had 59% possession compared to 41% possession that Costa Rica has. So in terms of the stats, certainly it looks like the US pretty much dominate every single category except for the blocked shots, and it looks like the stats tells you how the US was pretty much dominating in this game, which they were in the second half, but in the first, it wasn't kind of like that. But either way, guys, that is pretty much it for this news of the week. Let me know in the comments below what do you think of this, and let me know in the comments below what do you think of the US versus Costa Rica game. But yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I, of course, will see you guys next time with another news of the week episode.